Well, hi there. I'm Diana Montford, the world's first transgender television journalist. Lions and tigers and me. Oh my. Anyway, my guest is one of our all-time favorite spiritual persons, Ms. Sylvia Chappell, and the last name is perfect, and it's her real name. And we are going to talk about more about the Akashic Records, aren't we?
Yes, and thank you for having me on the show again.
Oh, my pleasure. Okay, now, just to recap, what exactly are the Akashic Records?
Okay, the Akashic Records are a field of living energy that exists in the 11th dimension. And that's a little hard to wrap our minds around, so I find it useful to think of it as a large library. And in this library are the books, the book of life of every soul that's incarnated on the earth, every thought, every feeling, every choice, everything about our past, what we're thinking about in the future, what we're thinking about in the present, and the probable outcomes of that in the future, because we're free will beings, and our future is determined by the choices that we make when we exercise our will.
But is karma, in other words, we're free will beings, but free will within the context of our karma. If you're born a Calcutta beggar, you can choose to beg on this corner or on that corner, but ultimately you are a Calcutta beggar, because that is your karma, isn't it?
Well, what I'm getting from the Akashic Record Keepers when I do readings for myself or for other people is that there's a new karma out there, and it really isn't karma. It's more like karma in that understanding of I did something wrong in a past life, therefore in this lifetime I've got to atone for it, I've got to make up for it, I've got to come back in the same situation, only worse. And what the record keepers say is that is not what karma is all about now. Yes, there are consequences to all the choices that we make. That's what this third dimension is all about. It's for us to experience the consequences. What's happened is that we've all noticed that life has sped up. You know, there's much more happening, more compressed.
More people.
More people, and it feels like there's just so much more compressed into every hour, into every day, into every week. And what's happening is that the consequences of our actions are coming back so much faster that it's more within this lifetime, because it's time for us to clear all of this. And the record keepers say that when we bring something, we often bring unnecessary burdens and unnecessary baggage from a past life because we have judged ourselves harshly. We have condemned ourselves to be that Calcutta beggar because we think we deserve in some way to be a Calcutta beggar.
But isn't it also possible to grow being a Calcutta beggar? It might
is.
not be, it might seem on the surface to be negative, but
Yes.
it might not. I once read
Yeah.
that sometimes, you see some person in the street begging alms, and it's actually a very evolved soul
Yes.
choosing to sort of spark our charitable impulses or something. Is that
Yeah.
possible?
Yes, and I've read accounts of that where someone did incarnate as someone who was handicapped or someone who was destitute, or someone who had suffered a great tragedy, and the reason given was to help other people get in touch with their compassion. Because it's all about, as you said, in every lifetime there's always a choice in how you will respond to your circumstances. And that's what determines what you carry forward as baggage or as gifts from a previous lifetime into this lifetime.
We won't really understand other dimensions until we're there. When we are in this dimension, it is like being a deep sea diver in an old-time diving suit with lead boots. We deliberately choose to forget what we know of higher planes so that we can function on this level. But then when we leave this place, we regain our knowledge, don't we?
Yes, I believe that we do. And we also take on this sense of being separate from each other to help each other learn, or to learn that ultimately we are all one. And there are different levels of our mind, and the part of our mind that believes that we are separate from each other is our normal waking consciousness. You know, the one that's very good at logic and getting us from point A to point B and navigating this third dimension. But that's the tip of the iceberg. Our subconscious mind is much less limited, and not limited by time and space, so that through, say, a past life regression or meditation or shifting in consciousness, people can go into the part of their minds that is less limited. And that would be a reason to develop a meditative practice, or to learn to access that. Mm-hmm. And that's something you can carry from past lifetimes, you know, where you've had spiritual achievement. You were able to do that because that's where we're connected. That's where your memories are stored. It's where your creativity is. It's sort of more of where your heart is. And when you're making choices from that more loving, broader understanding, that unlimited point of view, making choices with compassion, because you realize that somebody else who's in your life, who might be your antagonist, could be yourself. And because we talked about that on another show.
It is possible to be the same soul in various bodies, in various circumstances, simultaneously.
And on different sides of the same issue.
You can be a Union soldier and a Confederate soldier.
Yes.
Same soul, two different bodies, two different outlooks, two different ideologies.
Yes.
To learn the broad spectrum of human experience.
To learn compassion and say, if, as one of my examples that I shared, where I had incarnated as a slave owner and as his most trusted slave, it's to learn that if I were in his shoes, I would do the same thing. It's to learn compassion. And that's one of the common themes that comes up in the Akashic Records readings, that along with understanding that it's best if we forgive ourselves.
Is it possible for people to be married to each other and be the same soul, and what Socrates said, you know, looking for one's other half? Is that a possibility?
I would think so, yes. And Edgar Cayce, whose readings and life I've studied, and I volunteered with the Edgar Cayce organization for a long time, talked about what he calls twin flames, which are different halves of the same soul that incarnated, and often one will be more comfortable in incarnating in the female and one will be more comfortable incarnating in the male, but as you are an example of, gender doesn't matter so much. It's the connection. It's the connection of love that's important, and you champion that.
Well, I was meant to be transgendered, wasn't I?
Yes, that's part of your soul's purpose, because in the Akashic Records reading that I did for Diana, that came through, that she was living her soul's purpose to be a champion, to be a pioneer of tolerance, a champion of tolerance and love. So yes, I would. Go ahead.
I chose to be born into a family that dates back to the 18th century in Spain. My ancestor, Don Pedro Rodriguez, was the champion of the Spanish agrarian. His grandson, my grandfather, Don Basilio Alvarez Rodriguez, was the champion of the Spanish agrarian and known as the father of the poor. Did I choose to come to this family because they have a history of compassion, of somehow uplifting the downtrodden?
I think that's part of it. That you were born into a family where there was that sense of tolerance,
an
that we're all
obligation
one,
to the
and
public,
helping and helping those who might be oppressed or might be discriminated against in a lot of ways. And I think there were also a couple of family members who were a little less tolerant. So they might have been obstacles to you.
Such as?
But helping you learn.
Oh, yes, my father, yes.
Helping someone who is, in a way, is
He was
helping
quite
you
tolerant
learn.
of my being transgendered. We just didn't get along. Clash of personalities. No,
Okay.
he was an angel about my being transgendered. That he had no problem with. It's everything
That's
else
wonderful.
about me that he hated. But anyway.
Yeah.
So, your family, do you get along well with them?
Yes, I do.
Good.
I do get along well with them. but
Families repeat often. Karmic
soul
groups. Yeah.
Right, soul groups. Edgar Casey talked about that, definitely.
So it's possible to be your own grandfather. There was a song that way once. And you might well be your own grandfather or something.
Yes, you
Yes.
might well be. Well, it's certainly a way to learn tolerance and compassion if you are, and if you find out in an Akashic Records reading that the person you thought was your greatest protagonist was another aspect of you. Hello, compassion is
antagonist?
Antagonist. I'm sorry, did I say protagonist?
Yes.
Sorry. Antagonist is, or the person who was persecuting you. Another theme that comes up in the Akashic Records a lot and in past life regression is people being persecuted for psychic and intuitive abilities. Clairvoyance, seeing angels or visions. And
Well, hospitals are full of quote-unquote schizophrenics, like that famous nut job Joan of Arc, who do that and are considered
Yes.
insane.
yes, or were burned at the stake for that. You know.
So, Joan, how was the barbecue?
So in this lifetime, I chose a fairly quiet,
Well, you were
conservative
persecuted
family.
in previous lives
Yes, have
for
been,
being psychic, for want of a better term.
yes, definitely persecuted. And in one particular case, I was a young girl in London, daughter of a prominent judge, I believe, or someone who was fairly prominent. And I showed psychic and intuitive abilities. I was evidently seeing visions or hearing voices or things like that that I thought were just wonderful. And I was put into Bedlam for that. The original insane asylum was Bedlam, and conditions at that time in the 1700s were quite appalling there. And fortunately, that was a lifetime that I went and had a regression about with my teacher, Kev O'Kane, and we were able to change that lifetime. But what was what I took forward from that lifetime was, as I was planning this lifetime, I was very adamant about the fact that the psychic or the intuitive part of me is not going to come to the fore until I'm mature enough so that, and society is mature enough, or society is advanced enough so that it's safe for me to do that.
And this is your third career or second career. You
Yes,
have had
second career.
other careers quite unrelated to psychic phenomena, and so you
Yes.
waited until it was basically safe.
Yes, and I got the information from the record keepers, the Akashic record keepers, that I pretty much waited until my second Saturn return, and a Saturn
I
return.
thought that was when you were 28.
That would be the first, about 28 or 29, and that's, if you think about it, a solar return is your birthday, because that's when the sun is in the same position it was when you were born, and that takes a year. And then a Saturn, well, Saturn's orbit around the sun is much slower, and it's about 28 and a half years. So it wasn't until I was 58 or so that I encountered that second Saturn return, and that was something I had set up as I planned this lifetime.
You are not much older than that now, so obviously you have a backlog of psychic experience which came to the fore as soon as you made the commitment to a spiritual psychic life this time around.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
you couldn't be that good at it just in a few short years.
Well, and I'm also bringing forward from previous
That's what
lifetimes.
I'm saying.
Yeah,
That's exactly
yeah,
what I'm
definitely, definitely.
It's like someone who suddenly sings opera, and where did this come from? Or a child prodigy. Obviously, other lifetimes,
Yes.
the cumulative effect.
Yes, and a lot of people that I do Akashic Records readings for are told that they had the same issues with persecution, or they were told that their experiences were from the devil, or they were demonized for them or ridiculed for them. And often they will carry that into this lifetime in a sense of a sense that they need to be punished in some way.
Do you think it's possible that trans people, transgender people, who are mocked and killed and have sad lives, not all by any means, but those who do you think it's possible that they were once homophobes, or is that too easy? Is that too pat?
I would think that it's all in how they responded to the choices that they had and what they experienced in life. And if they were responsible for persecuting people for something that they felt in themselves, and that's a common theme, that people condemn
yes, indeed, like
in others what
gay
they
politicians
are afraid of in themselves.
Are ostensibly straight and pass laws against gay folk, and then are caught in men's rooms with a wide stance, or on their knees not praying, folks.
Yes, exactly, and that's been the source of a lot of these unnecessary burdens of karma that we carry from another lifetime, where we feel like we did something wrong, and it's us judging ourselves, and we bring that into this lifetime in a sense that we are going to need to suffer in some way.
Is it possible that, say, a Calvinist, who would be very judgmental of others and herself or himself, would choose to have worse karma than, say, a happy-go-lucky Polynesian person who thinks everything is fine and had a wonderful life eating breadfruit and comes back a very happy, well-adjusted person? But a Calvinist thinks, I ate that honeycomb in 1612. I have to pay for that. I had no right to do that. It was too good. And so they...
the sins of the flesh. The sins of the flesh.
Right.
Right. Yes. So definitely, that's something that we carry forward. And one of the things that I'm happy to be able to do through the Akashic Records readings that I do is to explain or give the record keeper's view of that, and help the person realize that the choices they made are less important than how they feel about them and what resulted from the choices. And as I'm giving the information, many people who felt that they really screwed up or they misused their psychic abilities or whatever, when I'm giving the information, I feel such compassion for the person that they were in that lifetime. I certainly wouldn't judge them myself. I would feel compassion for them. I would feel empathy for them. And they're able, through having this information given by the record keepers in a very loving and supportive way.
I've had 2 Akashic Record readings. It is very constructive. They don't say, you idiot, Of course this was wrong. What are you, a fool? We're
saying that.
Yes.
Yeah, we're saying that about ourselves, and they're saying, but from our point of view, your choices were, it's not what you chose, it's how you responded to that. Or if you internalized a feeling that of other people judging you, for example, for psychic abilities or things like that.
Well, but other people do judge you. I'm sure some people watching this show will think that Diana Montford has lost it. She's doing all these psychic shows. What happened to all the raunchy comedy? Is she going to show us her tits or what? I'm not going to show you her tits. No. So what do we do? Hang in there. More raunchy comedy coming soon. But, and singers and dancers and jugglers and...
I could do a raunchy comedy Akashic Records reading or something like that.
We could find out just where Gypsy Rose Lee is today. Hi, Gyps. Sally Rand. Take off those fans, girlfriend. Why
exactly.
not?
Why not? Well,
Oh, I used to be Jean Harlow. She said so.
the record keeper said so, so I do believe that. And,
Yes.
and you said you do feel a kinship with
All my life. Very strange.
resonance with
Yes.
her. And
My charming, delightful father used to refer to her as that cheap bum you're stuck on. Such a gentleman he was.
he said bum?
Bum in the South in the 1930s when my father was a young man meant tramp, i.e. whore. So he used to refer to Jean Harlow as, quote, that cheap bum you're stuck on.
Okay.
But anyway, so people do persecute psychics today. Many do.
Yes, they still do. And yet, one of the things is, if you think about whether you accept someone else's judgment of you or someone else's condemnation of you, whether you accept it has a lot to do with whether you are loving and confident in yourself. And if
Society does its best, though, to tear that down. If you don't buy this deodorant, you're not a good person. If you don't drive this kind of car, you are a loser and a failure. If you don't wear our clothes that we're selling right here, then you have no taste at all. I mean, that's
they
just
ask you
advertising.
to make decisions
Yes.
from fear.
Yes.
Fear of being
fear
ostracized.
copy. It's called fear copy.
Okay.
Even her best friends won't tell her. They laughed when I sat down at the piano, but when I began to play,
I know. Well, and
always a bridesmaid, never a bride. Or
my-
in Liz Taylor's case, always a bride, never a bridesmaid. Yes.
And as I was going to share that with my background as an advertising writer,
Yes.
what we kept moving towards is being positive and talking about happiness and what makes
Buy this
things more
lipstick and
loving.
your life is perfect. And it leads to world peace.
Yes. Well, it is a factor of making choices for positive reasons, from love.
But they tell us if we don't buy this, we're ugly and disgusting and vile.
I don't think anybody's doing very well who's doing that now,
Oh,
but
good.
I could be wrong. But
But that's how advertising
from my
started in
experience,
the 20s, somewhere west of Laramie. See, I know my stuff, honey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, you do. Well, and I'll give you some from even further in the past. Some of the other themes that I'm finding in the Akashic Records reading is, and this is also something that Edgar Cayce spoke about, a lot of us Atlanteans are back.
Are you an Atlantean?
Yes.
You don't look Atlantean. Funny, she doesn't look Atlantean.
I don't even have an Atlantean accent.
Yeah. So tell me, darling, where in Atlantis are you from here? No. Yes.
South of Hoboken.
Oh, okay.
So this is Atlantis at the time of the final breakup of the continent. This is 13,000 years ago.
I thought Atlanteans were really violent and crazy and like,
Atlantis had many periods of being a very advanced civilization.
Yes.
And it was towards the end that there were corrupting influences that came in. So there are a lot of people.
So you are an Atlantean.
I'm an Atlantean for that time. I've gone back, I know of a lifetime where I was part of the group that was trying an experiment. And this was working with the great crystal. Crystals powered everything.
Not
in
unlike today's
Atlantis.
laser beams.
Infinite and extremely more powerful.
A much more advanced civilization than the one we enjoy today.
Right. And where previously only the people who had reached a high level of spiritual attainment and integrity could tune into and work with the crystal. And there was an attempt by the spiritual scientist at the time, who would be adept with what we would call intuition or spirituality
And what's very interesting
spiritual
is that
technologies.
today saying spiritual scientist is inimical. It's a contradiction in terms, whereas at that time it was entirely possible on Atlantis to be a spiritual scientist.
Yes, and advanced civilizations were in attune with the spiritual as well as the mental and the physical world.
And you were?
And so I was part of the group that was trying to tune the crystal so that ascension would happen. Ascension as in raising in vibrations.
So
From where we are in the third dimension, this world of duality, polarity, through the fourth and into the fifth dimension to a higher state of consciousness where everything would be loving. And that was our intention. However, and I've done readings for other people who were part of this group and other people who were...
People whom you knew at the
were
time?
not. People who came to me for readings.
But I mean, also the same souls you knew at the time?
Some of them, yes. Some of them. Usually in an
So
Akashic
what
Records
happened?
reading, I'm
Very
focusing
quickly, we
on
only
the
have 2
client.
minutes.
So what happened was we underestimated the negative influences of those who wanted to tune the crystal for their own selfish agenda of control and power.
Yes.
And we overestimated our ability to counteract that.
Isn't that basically what's going on now? Those of us who want a better world underestimate the evil in the world and are at times overwhelmed by the evil in today's world?
We are, but what I have gotten through my own past lives and through Akashic Records readings is this time it's going to work.
Good.
This time we will ascend. And I've also gotten confirmation of that from other spiritual teachers.
Ascend emotionally and intellectually, not ascend
Level.
like the rapture where whoops, you go
Yeah.
up.
Right, and no separate, yeah, and it's not, some people are going to be judged and so, but it's more
It's not that. It's we will just
an
keep growing.
evolution in consciousness where we get to the level of the fifth dimension
without
where
giving away
everything
any
is
secrets.
loving.
You and I were both alive 50 years ago.
Mhm.
The world has grown so very much since then. It's unbelievable.
Yes, and our ascension is assured. It is going to work. We are going
Is
to
that
prevail.
everyone or just many of us? But a lot will not and will choose to be separate and live in a materialistic kind of gimme world.
Some might choose to stay in a third dimensional world.
How
yes.
can people contact you if they want to know more?
If they want to know more, my website is sylviachappell.net, SylviaChappell.net. And my phone number is 347-564-5600.
Okay, and I'm Diana Montford, and I love you. Even if no one else loves you, I love you. Even if you were on Atlantis, I love you anyway. And I will see you next time, and I love you a lot. And you take real good care of yourself, because you mean so much to me. Love you.